Have you ever thought about what happens after death? What if the soul didn't depart immediately, but remained trapped here, watching everything? In today's video, you'll hear the shocking story of Allison Kane, who was dead for 3 days and returned with a revelation direct from Jesus. The soul doesn't depart immediately, and the reason will give you chills. Like, subscribe to the channel, and comment below which city you're watching from. Let's begin this incredible journey. My name is Allison Kane. I have 36 years old. I live in Toledo, Ohio, and until the day it all happened, I had never believed in life after death. I work as an interstate truck driver and spend more time on the highways than at home. I've always been skeptical, straightforward, and tough. For me, death was just that. It was over, the end of the line, but I died. And what happened after? It was the opposite of everything I've ever heard. It was a Sunday night. I was returning from Denver with a load of chemicals. I had already driven for almost 10 hours straight. I remember the road getting darker, my eyes getting heavy, and then nothing. A flash, a deafening sound of twisting metal, and silence. When I opened my eyes, I saw my own truck overturned, crushed in a ditch, with my body trapped behind the steering wheel. And the worst part, I saw the firefighters trying to get me out, desperate. The sound of sirens, but I couldn't hear anything else. It was as if I were in a parallel world. The first thing I felt was confusion. I tried to scream, but I had no voice. I tried to run, but I had no body. And then, terror struck. I was dead. And yet, there, I wasn't pulled into the sky, nor enveloped by shadows. What happened was the most shocking thing. I stayed on Earth, taken there, watching every second like a conscious ghost. 3 days, 3 whole days. That's how long I stayed between worlds, watching people cry, doctors argue, the insurance company calling my wife. I saw her open the door and fall to the floor when she heard. I saw it all, but the most scary was yet to come. On the 3rd day, when I thought I was going crazy, a golden light filled the place. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at the same time. It was warm, but not burning. From the midst of this light, a presence appeared. And it wasn't just any presence. It was Jesus, but not like the church paintings. It was a living force, radiant, intense, impossible to look at directly, but at the same time made my soul tremble with peace. He told me without moving his lips, "The soul does not depart at once." It was there that everything made sense. I understood that death, it's not the end, but a wait intentional, a time where the soul remains watching, learning, reflecting, before being taken to her true destination. And the most terrifying thing was what he said next. The presence of Jesus before me was so intense that I could barely maintain a train of thought. It wasn't fear, it was something deeper. It was as if my whole being knew that I was before the absolute truth, and nothing, absolutely nothing, of what I had experienced before made sense anymore. That light around him wasn't just beautiful. It crossed me, showed me who I was inside, the places in my soul that I didn't even know existed, but it was when he reached out his hand to me that it all really began. Without needing to say anything, he made me see it was as if a kind of film was unfolding before me. Only these were no ordinary memories. Those were the days when I was between worlds. I saw my soul hovering over my house. In the first hours after the accident, I saw my wife, Amanda, sitting on the kitchen floor, hugging our 2 children, in complete silence. I tried to talk to her. I tried to touch her shoulder, but it was like touching the wind, and worse, she crossed me. Then Jesus showed me the reason I'm still there. The soul needs to see the impact of its life. It needs to feel what it has planted and what it has left undone. These words were not said with sound, but they went straight into my chest like a fiery arrow. I understood that that time between death and the final call was deliberate. It wasn't punishment. It was comparison, confrontation with everything I ignored, everything I neglected. I saw my father in the hospital, receiving the news. I saw my brother yell angrily on the phone, calling me irresponsible for driving while tired. I saw every face reacting to my death, and I felt that Almath pain I left behind. You need to know what you caused before you leave. Jesus showed me the invisible connections. A simple gesture of mine, like when I hugged a friend on the worst day of their life, reverberated like a wave of light. But I also saw the flaws, the pride, the times I ignored my son because I was too tired to play. Those memories burned. Not of physical pain, but of brutal conscience. And that's when I understood the true terror. Death does not disconnect you from earth immediately. You still feel everything. You see the consequences. You notice the words left unsaid, the forgiveness postponed, the hugs never given. And then Jesus said something that chilled my soul, if I can still call it that. Some stay for days, others for years. At that moment, my time there made perfect sense. It wasn't an empty limbo. It was a place of revelation, of accountability, emotional, and there was more. Jesus said it wasn't time to follow because there was something I needed to see about myself. When Jesus said it was not yet time to leave, I felt a mixture of fear and hope. Fear, because if what I had seen up until then was intense, I didn't know if I was ready for more. Hope, because a part of me still wanted to understand, truly, who I was. Without moving a finger, he transported me. It was as if the world around me fell apart and suddenly I was there, inside the church where my own wake was taking place. I saw my coffin. I saw my name emblazoned in gold letters. I saw flowers, people, suppressed tears, muffled screams. But what really broke me was seeing my children sitting in the front row, wide-eyed, unsure how to react to their father's death, and my wife, Amanda, trembling as she tried to read a note she wrote to me. A note that I've never heard of it in my life. You didn't need to be perfect. We just wanted you to be more present. Those words were like a punch to the core of my soul, because they were true. I'd strayed so far, for so long, always thinking I was doing the best I could, working hard, traveling, securing everything, except the essentials, my presence, and then something even stranger happened. As I watched the funeral, I saw people that I didn't even remember knowing, a former college classmate, a longtime delivery customer, even a homeless man I'd helped once. Everyone was there, some silent, others visibly moved. Every life touches another, Allison, even without realizing it. The voice of Jesus came as a thought, but as powerful as thunder. It was impossible not to feel, and it was at that moment that it made me see something that was not of this world. Behind each person at the wake, there was a form of energy, some intense and bright as the sun, others weak, almost dim. And then I understood, were the souls connected to the people I had touched, directly or indirectly. Those lights were like a living web, interconnected by compassion, by pain, by choices. Jesus looked at me and revealed, it is not the exact moment of death that defines the passage, but how ready your soul is to go. There, in that church, surrounded by memories, regrets, and connections I never realized in life, I understood. The soul does not leave immediately, because it needs to understand what it leaves behind. I cried. I cried in a way I never cried even when I was alive, but my tears wouldn't flow. They vibrated, like an emotion in the form of light. And then Jesus said, there's still something you need to see, something that will change everything. When Jesus said there was still something I needed to see, my chest, or what was left of it in that state, filled with a different kind of fear. It wasn't fear of pain or punishment. It was the kind of fear that comes when you realize the truth is about to dismantle everything you thought you knew. In the blink of an eye, the wake disappeared, and we found ourselves back at the scene of my accident. Only now I saw it from a different angle, as if time had frozen. The truck was overturned, my body was inert, and the paramedics were trying with all their might to bring me back. Jesus looked at me seriously, and his voice invaded my mind. That was the moment of departure. But you didn't go. That sentence echoed like silent thunder. I should have left at that very moment, when my heart stopped completely, when the last attempt at resuscitation failed. It was the physical end, but my soul was not taken. Why? And then Jesus showed me. My soul hesitated. It was like watching a slow-motion replay of what only a soul could experience. At the moment of death, there is a kind of called, an impulse of light that guides consciousness outward, a natural flow. But I clung to the earth, to my family, to my pain, to the things I left unfinished. I said, even without a voice, I'm not ready. And that simple intention, this thought, was enough to keep me between worlds. Free will does not end with the death of the body, Jesus said. You chose to remain, and when the soul chooses, heaven awaits. I was in shock. Everything I had learned about death, Heaven, hell, immediate judgment was being rewritten before me. Jesus wasn't talking about condemnation or rewards. He was talking about process, consciousness, awakening. And in this process, the soul remains, not out of punishment, but out of necessity. Because leaving before understanding would be like abandoning a book before the end. Jesus made me see others like me, thousands of souls hovering near their loved ones, near their bodies, near their homes, some angry, others in pain, many in denial. Some pray there are decades. I saw an elderly woman sitting beside her own grave, holding an invisible doll, a young man walking in circles in front of the hospital where he died, spirits in waiting, not condemned, but confused, trapped not by external forces, but by their own emotional bonds. Jesus showed me that this happens every day. The soul does not leave immediately, because sometimes it has not yet understood what it needs to let go of. And that's when the final revelation of this moment came like a surgical cut. You're not trapped, Allison. You're being prepared. And then he said to me, it's time to see what you really are, and who you could have been. At that instant, the light around us intensified, and something opened before us. When Jesus said I would see who I truly was, and who I could have been, something inside me began to tremble. It was as if my very soul was bracing itself for an impact no physical body could withstand. The light around us expanded, and we were transported again. But this time, it wasn't the past. It wasn't the present. It was the possible. Before me, a kind of parallel reality opened up, a place that seemed made of the very substance of eternity. There was no floor, no walls, no sky, just a vibrant field of possibilities. It was like watching my soul projected into different versions, each based on choices I'd made. No, I did. I saw myself living another life, a life that could have existed if I had followed what my soul most desired. In one of these visions, I wasn't a truck driver. I was a youth counselor in poor neighborhoods. I gave lectures, counseled teenagers about to enter the world of crime, saved lives with words. And the craziest thing, I saw one of these young people growing up to become a surgeon, which saved dozens of other lives. And it all started with me. Jesus looked at me with an expression that mixed love and seriousness. The choices you ignore don't disappear. They become paths not taken, but they live on in the spiritual realm. In another vision, I saw my relationship with my wife deep, loving, and healing. I saw us traveling together, building an NGO. I saw our children growing up with a present father, an awakened father. I started to shake. This is the life your soul planned before he was born, said Jesus. But it hasn't come true. Yet, those words were like knives, but not of guilt, but of urgency. It was as if I had been walking blindfolded the whole time, living a reduced version of myself, without even realizing that I could do more, that I owed more, not to the world, but to my own essence. And then, Jesus revealed, the soul does not depart immediately because there are revelations that can only be understood on the threshold between life and eternity. I cried again, but this time not out of sadness. It was as if the tears were a release of everything that had kept me from living fully. It was as if, for the first time, he see me for real. And then came the question that would change everything. Jesus looked into my eyes, those eyes that seemed to contain all the stars in the universe, and asked, do you want to know why you're taking this chance? I couldn't answer, but inside my soul, I screamed, yes, show me everything. It was then that the scenery has changed again, and I found myself in front of a place I never imagined existed. In an instant, all those visions of what I might have been began to dissolve like smoke. The light around me changed. It was no longer golden. Now it was gray, dense, not cold, but heavy, and I knew, without anyone needing to say, that we were entering a sacred space, and at the same time, disturbing. Jesus looked at me with deep compassion. You must see where many remain, where the soul waits, but without knowing it is still here. And then, the ground opened up into mist. What I saw chilled me to the core, a kind of valley, without time or place. It wasn't dark like the hell in the movies, but it wasn't bright either. It was like a forgotten dream, a space between worlds. In it, thousands of souls, they walked slowly, as if they were looking for something or someone, without knowing what. Some were mumbling incomprehensible things, others just stared into space. None of them seemed to notice that there were others around. It was as if each of them were trapped in your own bubble of consciousness. Jesus explained to me, these are souls who haven't yet understood that they've departed. Some believe they're still alive. Others resist the idea of death so much that they remain trapped in this gap, where time doesn't move forward and departure doesn't happen. I saw a man in a suit repeating the same phrase over and over. I need to finish the report. I need to finish the report. He'd been there for years, maybe decades, bound by one last responsibility. A young woman repeated the same steps, walking in circles. Where's my baby? Where's my baby? Era desperate. But more than that, it was developer. The soul does not depart because the heart is still attached to the earth, to the pain, to the guilt, to the illusion of control. Jesus made me feel what these souls felt: confusion, attachment, fear of letting go. And there, in the midst of it all, he showed me something that completely destroyed me. I saw a version of myself among them. It was me, standing there, looking at the ground, muttering, "It's not time yet. It's not time yet." That wasn't a prediction. It was a real possibility. If I hadn't woken up in those first moments after the accident, I would have stayed there, trapped, lost, unaware that he had already died. Jesus placed his hand on my shoulder and said, "Many are here now, Allison. They live among the living unnoticed. They believe they are forgotten, but the truth is, they haven't yet allowed themselves to leave." He then added, "You were called to see this, because your soul, there is still time." And in that instant, the space around us began to tremble, as if a new stage were about to begin. Jesus looked up, and an opening of light began to form above us. But before we crossed, he asked me one last question. "Are you ready to see what happens?" After that, the soul finally accepts to leave, and I said, without fear for the first time, "Try." The opening of light above us grew like a pulsating portal, as if the universe itself were folding in on itself to reveal something my eyes and my soul could never have imagined on their own. Jesus extended his hand, and without needing words, I understood. We were going to the place of after, the space where souls truly go when they agree to leave. The moment we crossed the threshold of that light, I felt as if every cell of my consciousness was being purified. Everything heavy, everything I carried, guilt, doubt, haste, the past, was left behind as an empty shell. What I saw on the other side, it was not the heaven of religions. It was not a cloud, a harp, or a golden gate. It was something so real and profound that human words pale before the attempt to describe. Era, life without form, but with purpose. Imagine a city without walls, made of living light. Imagine energy trails connecting thoughts, feelings, intentions. Imagine millions, perhaps billions, of souls gathered together, yet with none of them lost in the collective, each vibrating its essence, a single note within an eternal symphony. Jesus looked at me with a serene smile. This is home. And for the first time, I understood what that word really meant. Home is not a physical place. It is a state of consciousness where the soul finally remembers who it is. And there, in the middle of that infinite field of light, I saw souls that had already passed through me on earth, people who had died years ago, distant relatives, childhood friends, even that elderly gentleman I used to help cross the street when I was a teenager. They were there, whole, serene, at peace. Some approached, and even without voices, they transmitted to me a feeling impossible to describe. It wasn't longing, it was eternal recognition. Jesus explained to me, when the soul accepts to leave, it unites with the source once more, and then all that was doubt becomes clarity, all that was pain becomes wisdom, all that was loss becomes love. I fell to my knees, even though I didn't have physical knees, overcome by such immense emotion that my consciousness seemed to dissolve in the midst of it all. It was as if I had returned to the womb of the universe itself. And then, Jesus revealed, "This experience is not the end. It is a calling. You still have a choice." That took me by surprise. "A choice?" He nodded with his eyes. "You can continue. Stay. Remain here in this dimension. Or return. Return to Earth." I felt a cosmic chill run through my being. "But why?" I asked, my soul heavy. "Because it's not over yet," he said. "Your mission is unfinished." The thought of going back was almost unbearable. After seeing all this, why would I return? But then he showed me something that completely paralyzed me. An image, a single image, my son, years in the future, in danger, and a choice only I could make. A choice that would change his destiny, and that of many others. Jesus spoke one last time, with a voice that sounded inside me like an avalanche of love. The soul does not depart at once, because there are moments that still await it. And in that instant, I understood everything. In that moment, when Jesus showed me that vision, my son, years older, leaning over the edge of an abyss that only I recognized, something inside me awakened with a force that no previous experience had provoked. It wasn't about me anymore. It was about him. It was about the legacy. I saw my son with tears in his eyes, surrounded by loneliness, about to make a decision that would change everything. I saw his father's absence as an invisible hole in his soul. And then, Jesus showed me the outcome. Two possibilities. In the first, he knew without my presence, without my example, he got lost. On Monday, with my return, he became a pillar of light for many. You think your mission is over because your body has stopped, Jesus said. But there are seeds that only germinate when you return with your eyes wide awake. I was trembling inside. Everything I had seen, the time my soul spent on earth after the accident, the revelations of the funeral, the untraveled paths, the valley of lost souls, and now, the future at stake, led me to an inescapable truth. The soul does not depart immediately, because it still holds responsibilities in time. And there, for the first time, I asked to come back, not out of attachment, not out of fear, but because now I knew returning was not a setback. It was a sacred mission. Jesus then said, "If you return, you will not be the same. You will no longer be able to live on autopilot. Your every gesture will be like an invisible thread that weaves the fate of others. Consciousness does not go back to sleep. It went through me like fire, but it was a good fire, the fire of truth." And then, once again, he showed me future scenes, me hugging my son at a crucial moment, me saying "I love you" without shame, me helping a stranger on the edge of a bridge, me saying yes to the spiritual mission that has always been dormant within me. I cried, not of pain, but of reverence for what was being entrusted to me. Then Jesus placed his hand on my chest, or what was left of my consciousness, and said, "You are ready. But remember, whoever returns, returns marked. You will know every day that you are no longer living for yourself, but for something greater." The next second, everything began to darken, but it wasn't the darkness of an end. It was the veil between worlds closing. The sensation was like falling, but towards the flesh, as if I were being sewn back into matter. I felt my heart, my ribs, my eyes getting heavy. I was coming back, but before it all disappears, Jesus said something that echoed within me with the force of 1,000 spiritual thunders. Don't forget what you saw, because many do, and they live as if they had never died. And then, silence. The silence lasted for what seemed like an eternity. And then, a sound cut through everything. A high-pitched, frantic, pulsing whistle in my ear. It was the heart monitor. I opened my eyes. The hospital lights blinded me for a moment, and I felt physical pain explode in my chest, as if someone had crushed me from the inside. I was back, but I was no longer the same man who had left. The doctors around me were screaming. One of them was crying. One of them said, "He came back. Good heavens, he came back. 3 days. It was 3 days in a coma, without any brain signal. And now there I was, breathing, conscious, vivo. But the real shock was not physical. He was spiritual. I remembered everything. Every second in that dimension. Every word spoken by Jesus. Every soul I saw in the valley. Every possibility of the life I could have lived, and could still choose to live. It was like carrying two worlds at the same time. The material world, with its weight, its routines, its pains, and the invisible world, vibrating within me with a sacred urgency. I saw the world with different eyes. Literally, people passed by me, and I sensed their pain, their light, their inner turmoil. It was as if their souls were whispering, even without saying anything. I was marked. Jesus Havia here. Whoever returns, returns marked. And I felt it on my skin. The first thing I asked for was to see my wife and children. When I walked into my house for the first time after being discharged, everything looked the same, but I wasn't that man anymore. I hugged my wife as if it were the first and last time. I knelt before my children and cried. I asked for forgiveness. I promised to be there, and most of all, purpose. But there was something else, something I needed to do, and it gave me no peace. Remembering the vision of the valley, of those trapped souls, I knew I needed to speak. I needed to tell. I needed to warn, because most people live as if they were eternal, but the soul, it can get stuck here, trapped by guilt, by attachment, by lack of forgiveness, and the world needs to know. The soul doesn't depart immediately, and this isn't a punishment. It's a call, a warning. Since my return, my life has changed. I left the road. I began to dedicate my days to something I never imagined, sharing my experience, one by one, with whoever crossed my path. Because it is a single soul, being able to wake up before death, it was worth coming back. But something was still missing, something Jesus had shown me, but hadn't happened yet. A few months after my return, life seemed to be getting back on track, but inside, I knew something was still missing. It was as if a door was ajar within my soul, calling me back to that presence, to that light, to that truth that only the other side can reveal. And it was one night, alone on the porch, while my children slept and my wife dozed on the couch, that I felt he again, that same energy, warm, silent, infinite. I closed my eyes. The world around me seemed to disappear for a few moments. And then, the presence of Jesus was there again, not with body or image, but as a living vibration within me. And he told me, crystal clear, "Now you are ready to know why it all happened." My heart raced. I always wondered, why me? Why that death? Why this experience? And Jesus responded with the most powerful silence I have ever heard. An image arose within me, a timeline, long, full of forks, detours, choices. And then, I saw the exact point where my soul had deviated from its original purpose. I saw it when I abandoned a dream to be practical. I saw when I silenced my heart to maintain stability. I saw it when I chose to survive, not live. And even stronger, I saw the people I should have impacted, and didn't. It was then that Jesus concluded, "Sometimes you have to die, for the soul to finally awaken." The death of the body was the only way to silence the noise of your life. Only in the silence of death could you hear the voice of your essence. It exploded inside me like a soft thunder. I understood with brutal clarity. I needed to die to be born again, not as a new body, but as a new consciousness. And the final revelation came like a whisper that echoed through the galaxies. The soul does not depart at once, because love still has things to say. In that moment, I felt a peace I had never experienced before. It was as if all the fragments of my existence had finally fallen into place. It all made sense. The pain, the fall, the weight. It was all love in disguise. I opened my eyes. The night continued outside, but inside me, the day had dawned. Today, every morning I wake up. I don't wake up the same way I used to. I wake up in a hurry to love, in a hurry to forgive, in a hurry to fulfill the mission that was revealed to me between worlds. Because now I know, the soul does not depart at once. She stays, until she understands what needs to be transformed. And if you're listening to this, maybe, yours is also waiting for this awakening. If you enjoyed this beautiful spiritual testimony, please leave a like, comment, share your impressions, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell to watch each new video and help us spread this message to a greater number of people. Until next time.